Welcome back, Daisy Cakes. Today I want to review Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak. Why? Because I am Daisy X Machina, the drag queen detective who investigates all things speculative in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I picked Time is the Simplest Thing from the 1962 nominees for the Hugo Award for Best Novel. It lost out to the seminal novel Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, which I had already read. So I chose Clifford D. Simak's novel because the blurb sounded really interesting and I do like the author. But first, who is Clifford D. Simak? Clifford D. Simak was born in 1904 and died in 1988 at the age of 83. He got a job as a journalist in a small-town newspaper in 1929 and eventually became news editor at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, where he remained until his retirement in 1976. During his entire lifetime, he wrote science fiction on the side, starting in 1931 with a story published by Hugo Gernsback, the guy the Hugo Award is named after, in the magazine Wonder Stories. He wrote sporadically throughout the 30s and 40s, but he became much more prolific in the 50s. His most famous novel, City, is a fix-up novel that is a novel stitched together from short stories he published throughout his career about the far future where pacifist dogs are the dominant race and are fondly looking back on that strange species known as human. Clifford D. Simak is the father of a little-known subgenre of science fiction known as pastoral science fiction. This is science fiction set in small towns in pastoral settings, sometimes also called rural science fiction. Any story about an alien living hidden in a small town among the locals is a common story in pastoral science fiction. Let me know in the comments if you want a video that is about that subgenre. Clifford D. Simak won many awards throughout his career, including Nebula and Hugo and Bram Stoker Awards. In 1977, he was the third person named Grand Master of Science Fiction. He's well regarded in the fandom. In fact, he also won the Fandom Hall of Fame Award in 1973. Despite all his accolades and a pretty decent body of work, over 25 novels and well over 100 short stories, today he is not as well known as his peers like Heinlein or Asimov, Pohl, Sturgeon, and so on. Maybe it was because his works were more quiet or more pastoral, if you will. I remember reading one of his novels from the 70s, Shakespeare's Planet, and I loved it, even though it was kind of like waiting for Godot. Not a lot happened. I recall lots of discourses and ruminations on philosophy in that book. Maybe I was just pretentious back then and felt like I'd read something important. I don't know. I just loved it at the time. So this brings us to the book that I want to talk about today, originally titled The Fisherman, when it was serialized in Analog in 1961. Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak, which of course is one of the nominees of the 1962 Hugo Awards. I was reminded of Shakespeare's Planet because there are a few stretches, and by that I mean a few pages of philosophical navel-gazing, but this book also has a lot of action. It's set in the future where humans have discovered that space travel is impossible because of bands of radiation in space. Now remember, this was written 7 years before the first Man on the Moon. It was also first published in 61, so it was probably drafted in 1960, which was before the first man in space, and that was, of course, the Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin in 1961. In Time is the Simplest Thing, humans have discovered psychic powers or paranormal powers. In fact, those with paranormal powers were derogatively called paries. More on that later. One mega corporation called Fishhook has a monopoly on a very special brand of machine that can take certain people with a certain paranormal power to be able to send their minds to other planets and even bring back small objects from those planets. That's the only way man can travel to the stars, psychically augmented by machines. Fishhook has become the most important and wealthiest organization on the planet because these explorers into other planets, these fishermen, can bring back knowledge and objects created by alien technology, which, of course, Fishhook copyrights and sells, including medicine and technology that everyone has come to rely on. And every once in a while, one of these explorers or fishermen goes mad having touched a very strange alien mind. That's what happens to our main character here, Shep Blaine. His mind travels to a strange alien planet inhabited by an ancient entity, and his mind is altered. And that alteration is recorded by Fishhook. And so Fishhook wants to lock him away, and Shep Blaine doesn't want to be locked away, so he goes on the run. Now, remember I said that paranormals are derogatively called paries? For most of the population, paranormals are considered abnormal, not really human, something to be feared. Now, I think this is a parable about racism, because let's zoom out a minute and look at the time this was written, the early 60s, before desegregation. If you recall, there's another book I had read in this Hugo series called Immortality, Inc., published in 1959, that envisioned complete desegregation as a lofty goal for the future. Science fiction often is on the forefront of social changes, and desegregation was one of those changes we see in science fiction around this time, maybe presented as a fait accompli, like in the original Star Trek series, or in some of Heinlein's books going back to the 40s, or in parables like in this book, Time is the Simplest Thing. Paranormals or paries are literally lynched by mobs in small towns. And that's what the main character, Shep Blaine, encounters. There's also a more idyllic town where paranormals have gathered to contrast against these small-minded, racist towns. There are a lot of elements of a thriller in this novel. Shep is on the run. Corporate hunters are tracking him down. Towns are hostile. He has to hide that he is a paranormal. And the alien he encountered that changed him is sort of also now part of him. And he finds more psychic powers manifest, especially when he is under stress, like the ability to slow down or speed up time. I like this novel. It's not my favorite Simak novel. If you've never read him, maybe start with City. I think just story-wise, I even kind of preferred Shakespeare's Planet, though I think I'm the only one that liked that book. But I found Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford D. Simak to be a really fascinating artifact for the time period, a parable about racism in the form of science fiction. I immediately thought of the 90s when there was a lot of X-Men stories that paralleled what it was like for gays and lesbians living in the closet, having to hide who they really are, or else risk being ostracized by society. So what about you? Have you read or do you want to read Clifford D. Simak? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Next time, I'll be picking a book from the 1963 Hugo nominees, so keep an eye out for that. Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.